Lady Mary, the youngest of 3 sisters, was to be married in the morning. The night before, she rode alone to see the castle in the wood where her new husband had promised she would live. The gate stood open. No one was there to greet her. Over the first inner door, in fresh white paint, the bride read 4 words: "Be bold, be bold." Lady Mary was the brightest of her father's daughters, and she had not loved the man she was to marry. He had courted her for a year. He was handsome and he was rich, and he had a name no one in her father's county had ever heard. He called himself Mr. Fox. This is the story of how Lady Mary set something down on the white linen of the wedding table the next morning that ended the wedding. Over the first door of the castle, in fresh white paint, the bride read, "Be bold, be bold." Mary went in. The corridor was long and dark. There were no servants, there were no lamps lit. The cold dusk light of an October evening came in through the high, narrow windows, and the stone of the floor took her steps and gave them back to her, doubled, behind her. She came at last to a second door, taller and darker than the first. Over it, in the same fresh white paint, she read, be bold, but not too bold." Mary went in. The second corridor was narrower. There were marks on the floor that she did not want to look at. At the end of it stood a third door, bound in iron, set deeper into the wall than the first 2. Over it, in the same fresh white paint, were the words, be bold, but not too bold, lest that your heart's blood should run cold." Mary put her hand on the latch. She was Lady Mary, the brightest of her father's daughters. She lifted the latch. She opened the door. The room behind the third door was the room a young woman is told never to go into, in every story the old women in the kitchens of England have ever told. Mary stood in the doorway and did not move. There were the bones of young women in the room. Some were old and stripped clean and stacked along the walls. Some were not so old, and there were rings still on the finger bones of some of them. And against the far wall, lying as though she had only an hour ago lain down, was the freshest of them, a young woman in a wedding dress with her hair across the floor and her right hand outstretched with a ring on it. Mary did not scream. She did not cry. She understood, standing in that doorway, exactly what kind of house she had been promised in marriage and exactly what kind of man had brought her to it. Then, from the courtyard behind her, she heard the gate. She had only the time it takes for a man to ride into a courtyard and walk up the steps of his own house. Mary drew the chamber door almost shut. She saw a great wine cask in the shadow against the corridor wall, and she slid down behind it. She drew her dark traveling cloak around her so that no part of her wedding white showed. She made herself small. She breathed slowly through her mouth, the way her old nurse had taught her to breathe when she wanted to be unseen in a room. She heard Mr. Fox come in. He was not alone. He was dragging a young woman by the hair, and the young woman was half senseless, and Mary did not look out from behind the cask. Mr. Fox passed within 3 feet of where she lay. At the chamber door, he stopped. Mary heard the young woman fall. She heard Mr. Fox draw his sword to take a heavy gold ring from the woman's right hand. The hand with the ring upon it parted from the wrist and flew, and it landed in Mary's lap behind the cask. Mary did not move. She did not breathe. In the chamber, Mr. Fox cursed once and looked for the hand on the floor and did not find it. He drank from a flask. He fell asleep against the wall. Mary waited until his breathing settled. Then she wrapped the hand in her white kerchief and walked, very quietly, out of the corridor, out of the castle, and across the courtyard to her horse. The moon was up over the wood. Mary rode home alone through the trees with the kerchief tucked inside her cloak, and the hand inside the kerchief, and the ring inside the hand. She did not cry. She did not stop. She did not look back at the castle. She came in by a side door before the household was awake. She washed her face. She put the kerchief, still folded into the deep pocket of her wedding dress. She combed out her hair. She did not tell anyone that morning what she had seen. She had decided on the dark ride home how she would tell it. By custom in that country, on the morning of a wedding, both families sat down together at the wedding breakfast. The long table was set with white linen and pewter and bowls of late autumn fruit. Mary's father sat at the head. Mr. Fox sat at her right hand. Mary sat in her wedding white, and she ate very little. By the same custom, the bride was asked, before the meal was finished, to tell the company a story. It could be any story she liked. It was thought, in that part of England, that the story a young woman told on her wedding morning showed the kind of wife she meant to be. Mary's father turned to her, smiling. "Daughter," he said, "will you tell us your story?" Mary folded her hands in her lap very neatly in the way a young woman is taught to do when she is going to speak before a hall of older people. "I had a dream last night," she said. "I dreamed I rode out, alone, to see the castle in the wood where my husband had promised me I would live." She said, "I dreamed the gate of the castle stood open, and there were no servants in the courtyard, and the door of the great hall was unlocked. Mr. Fox laid down his knife. He smiled and he said in the polite voice of a man humoring his bride, 'It is not so, nor it was not so, and God forbid it should be so.'" Mary went on. "I dreamed," she said, "that over the inner doors of the castle there were words painted in fresh white paint, and the words grew darker as I went deeper into the house. 'Be bold over the first, but not too bold over the second.' And over the third, the words, 'Lest your heart's blood should run cold.'" Mr. Fox's smile did not change, but the smile no longer reached his eyes. He said again, more carefully, "It is not so, nor it was not so, and God forbid it should be so." Mary went on. "I dreamed," she said, "that I opened the third door, and in the room behind it I saw what no young woman should ever see in the house of the man she is to marry. I saw the bones of women who had been brides before me. I saw against the wall a young woman in a wedding dress with a ring still on her right hand. The whole length of the table was silent. The fathers and brothers and uncles of both families had stopped eating. Mr. Fox was very pale now, and his right hand was on the hilt of his sword. He said a third time in a voice that was not quite his own, 'It is not so, nor it was not so, and God forbid it should be so.'" Mary went on. "I dreamed," she said, "that Mr. Fox came into the corridor dragging that young woman by the hair. I dreamed that he raised his sword to take the ring she wore upon her hand, and that the hand with the ring upon it flew from her wrist and landed in my lap where I lay hidden behind a wine cask. I dreamed that he looked for it and did not find it. I dreamed that he drank and fell asleep. I dreamed that I rose and wrapped the hand in the white kerchief I carry in my pocket and rode home through the wood to my father's hall. Mr. Fox stood up from the wedding table. He said for the fourth time in a thin voice that shook now at the edges, 'It is not so, nor it was not so, and God forbid it should be so.'" Mary did not stand. She took the white kerchief from the deep pocket of her wedding dress. She set it on the white linen of the wedding table in front of her. She folded the kerchief open, very neatly, in the way a young woman is taught to fold a thing she has carried carefully a long way. The hand of the young woman from the castle lay on the wedding table, and the ring was still upon it. "But it is so," said Lady Mary. And it was so. And here is the hand and the ring I bring to show. The wedding hall did not move. Then Mary's father rose, and her brothers rose, and her uncles rose, and they took Mr. Fox in that hall in front of both families, and they dealt with him as the law of the country dealt with such men. Lady Mary did not watch. She sat at the head of the long table in her wedding white, with the kerchief open in front of her and her own hands folded again, very neatly in her lap. The morning light came in through the high windows of her father's hall, and outside, somewhere far down the valley, a single bell began to ring. Lady Mary lived a long life after that morning. She did not marry. She kept her father's hall. The kerchief folded, she kept in a small box in the press in her own room, all her days. And when, in the evening, her younger nieces asked her, "Aunt Mary, was there ever a man you would have married?" she would smile at them in the firelight and say only what the old women in the kitchens of England have always said about the houses of such men. "Be bold," she would tell her nieces. "Be bold, but not too bold." This was Forgotten Fables. Follow the channel when you want the next story the loud world forgot.